Shalom, shalom, Israel, shalom, unto the 12 tribes of Yasha Allah, giving the course, all honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh, Bash, Mamashak, Yahweh. That's all praises, honor, glorification unto the Most High God, Yahweh, in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh, who the world refers to as Jesus Christ, and He is the Savior of the nation of Israel. All right, shalom, shalom, Yahweh, Bash, Mamashak, Yahweh, Barakatah. All right, so I'm going to get straight into this. This is going into three prophecies. Okay, three prophecies, of course, in the Old Testament. Thus saith the Lord, going into the eschaton. All right, and the eschaton, of course, is the end times, right? And this is kingdom is going to have these three prophecies all have kingdom connotation. Okay, kingdom connotation. So these are prophecies pertaining onto what's going to happen in the Most High's kingdom. All right, and these are three prophecies, three specific prophecies that prove that the law is not done away with, because you have a lot of ignorant Christians who would say that the law is done away with and that you don't have to keep the laws and that they're not required for your salvation, right? And that they were not required for Israel to do after the death of Christ. However, this is not supported biblically and it's not supported scripturally. And we're going to pull three prophecies through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Basham Yahweh, of course, to prove that the law is not done away with. So let's get straight into it. Let's start with the book of Isaiah, chapter 60 and verse 3, right? Isaiah 60 and 3. Actually, I'm going to start with Salakia. I'm going to start with Isaiah 2. Okay, I'm going to leave that one. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 2, verse 1. It says, the word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Okay, verse 2. And it came to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow onto it. This also proves that there is going to be a ethnic hierarchy in the kingdom, because all nations are going to flow onto Israel, right? That's the Lord's house. The Lord's house literally is Israel, right? We're synonymous with the Lord's house, according to various amount of precepts. One being of Revelation 11 and 1 through 2. We're the spiritual temple, right? Israel is the spiritual temple. But we're going to be exalted, right? And we're going to be established in the top of the mountains. Mountains represent nations, right? Mountains represent nations. But that's a different breakdown. You can read about that in the book of Psalm chapter 68, though, right? Here's the point. Verse 3. And many people shall go and say, these many people are heathen, right? Ethnic heathen, right? Many people shall go and say, come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, right? So they're saying, let us go to the house of the Lord. Let us go to the house of Jacob, right? To the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways. So Jacob is going to teach. Remember, Jacob being, of course, synonymous with the nation of Israel, right? It's not the literal man Jacob, right? Not just him, but, his descendants, right? It says, and he would teach us of his ways, right? What are the ways of Jacob? The ways of Jacob are the ways of the Lord, right? Because we do know. Let's go to, we're going to go to Psalms, right? Let's go to Psalms 78 and 5, right? It says, for he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel. For he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children. So the laws and commandments, of course, were given to the nation of Israel. Those are the ways of Jacob, right? So when we go back to this in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 3, it says, right, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law. This is kingdom connotation in the Lord's kingdom. Out of Zion shall go forth the law. Meaning we're going to be establishing the law in the kingdom. We're going to be teaching the laws, statutes, and commandments to the other nations in the kingdom of heaven. This is clear. It's prophecy, right? And the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. You see that? So if the law is done away with, let's take the logic of these Christians that say that. If the law is done away with, how come the law is here in the kingdom of heaven? That means that the law is not done away with, right? Let's go to the book of Micah, chapter 4. Micah chapter 4, verse 1. But in the last days, so this is clearly kingdom connotation, clearly the eschaton, right? It says in the last days. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains. So the same phraseology we see here, same thing that we see in Isaiah chapter 2. And it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. These people are going to the other nations. And many nations shall come and say, come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, same phraseology, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth out of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So the law is going to go forth out of Zion. We're going to be enforcing the laws, statutes, and commandments, as well as teaching them to the other nations, right? Of course, all of Israel will know all the commandments because it's going to be written on our heart, because in the kingdom, we will be in the new covenant. That's Jeremiah 31 on down, Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 8 on down, right? So let's go to the final precept. So those are two prophecies already. Let's go to the final one. It's the book of Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 3, right? It says, and the Gentiles. Okay, so these are talking about actual other nations, right? Actual Gentiles, right? And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. What is the light of Israel? Right? What does that mean? Gentiles shall come to thy light. Right? The light is going to come forth from Israel. Because we understand what the Lord said in the book of Matthew, right? Chapter 5. Let's go to Matthew 5 and 14. It says, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. That's what the Lord said to us. He's saying this to the house of Israel. He's saying you are the light of the world, right? We're the ones that bring that light to the world. We're like a city that is set on the hill. It cannot be hid, right? So what is that light that's shedding? What's causing us to shine, right? Because when we go to verse 16, it says, let your light so shine before men. What is that light, right? That they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. So we know that that this light is good because it's synonymous with these good works, that men may see your good works. What are these good works, right? Let's go to the book of Proverbs. Let's see what the light is. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 23. It says, for the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way of life. So the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light. So let's go back to this precept. Understand this. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 3. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light. Right? They're going to come to the light of Israel. That light of Israel, right? Of course, the light is a lot of things. You go to John chapter 9, verses 4 on down. You go to John chapter 8, verse 12 on down. Yahweh Shah is a light, right? We understand that. But guess what? Yahweh Shah is also the word. So out of Israel is going to come forth that light. That light is also the commandments. As we read in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 23, the law is light. So this proves ultimately, right? Here's the summary. These three prophecies that we just went over, right, through the Spirit, Micah chapter 4, Isaiah 60, and Isaiah chapter 2. These prophecies prove that in the kingdom of heaven, Israel will be enforcing the law, statutes, commandments. We're going to be, that law is still going to be there. And Gentiles will have to come to us in order to learn of it, in order to take part of it. You see that? So, with that, all praises to Yahweh Ba, Shema Ma, Shaka, Bashah, Lord willing, this is edifying. Shalom.